G'day YouTube, I'm Tractor, welcome to Millsema East and the Village. Hopefully enough of you have either joined by now or we'll see this later on. This is a very basic introduction to RATEL. Everything we're doing here is open source, there's nothing secret or fantastic about what we're doing. Plenty of people out in the world use it exactly this same way, so there's nothing special about what we're teaching. You may have learned it doing cadets or anything else. So let's begin. So today we're going to cover a few different topics. We're going to talk about pro words, the phonetic alphabet and numbers and how we do them in Australia. You may have seen them in the movies. We do them slightly different to what the Americans do. We'll talk about call signs and titles and how they'll relate to Eastern Predator specifically. There's a couple of different types of calls that we do on a military radio net. We'll talk about how to join and leave the net. You don't just jump on and get off as you wish. Talk about radio checks. Talk about giving both short and long sorts of messages to other people on the net, and reports and returns. So for those of you that have seen in the movies, there's times when military units get on the radio and send very specific information in a short form. That's what reports and returns are. So the first one is, what is a pro word? So for ease of transmission, we use pro words so that everyone on the net is speaking the same language. And here's some examples. So we use Roger. That means, yeah, I get what you're saying, I'm with you, yeah, I understand. Nothing really complex about that. You notice there's no Roger Wilco next to that, and we'll go into that in a minute. Send, yeah, if you're on the radio and somebody's talking to you and wants to send you a message, you tell them, yes, send. Nice brief word, very quick to say. They know, yeah, I'm ready to write that down. And literally, you'll have a pen and paper in your hand when you say the word send on the radio. Wilco. So if a command unit tells a subordinate unit what to do, that's when Wilco comes into play. Notice Roger and Wilco aren't mixed together. Roger just means, yeah, I get what you're saying. Wilco means, I get what you're saying and I'm going to do that. So you might hear it in the movies where they go Roger Wilco. You've just said, I understand, and I'm going to do, if you say Roger Wilco. One of the great things about military RATEL procedures is brevity, so you always use the least amount of words possible. So we've got words like radio check, and we'll explain the process for that. And basically that's just checking out the strength of your radio, that you're on the net, that it works, so on and so forth. There's a pro word called wait. When you can't transmit straight away or you need to do something, you can say wait, and that gives you a couple of seconds to do something. Wait out is when, I don't quite have the information I need to give you, so you give wait out and then you create a call again later on. Out to you, if you're talking to multiple people and you finish talking to one of them, that's when you say out to you. And we'll give examples of all of this in real conversation in a minute. Acknowledge. Yeah, I just like to use the word Roger instead of acknowledged. It's much simpler, it's sharper, it's quick to understand, but people use acknowledge as well. I think it's overkill, but it's up to you. Authenticate. We're not going to be using authenticate at this Eastern Predator, but I'm putting it in there for the future. When we start using coded messages and secret squirrel type stuff, then there will be radio call signs on the net that say authenticate. Then they'll give you a code and you need to reply back with the exact right code so that everyone knows that you are the person you are saying you are. Cool. So for this first Eastern Predator, we're not doing any of that secret squirrel stuff, just to keep it simple, get people used to the idea, and we'll crack on. So if you heard part of a conversation and you only heard the last half of it, you go, all right, say again all before, and you say the first bit you heard. So that's the pro word all before. And the next one, all after. So if you heard the first bit, it broke up, you send back a message and go, yeah, I heard you say up to number 3, say again all after 3. And then they'll just read back that from 3 onwards. Say again. We don't use repeat on our radio system. And the main reason for that is repeat is a term that we use for artillery. And we are having artillery simulation at Eastern Predator. So if you say repeat on the radio, the artillery people will get all upset and they'll send artillery back to the last call sign that called for artillery. So that could be really bad for your coalition or militia friends that are getting artillery dons. So avoid the word repeat and always use say again. Close down. When you leave a military radio net, you need permission to do so. And the pro word there is close down, not turn off or anything else. So the call sign above you will say close down now, out, and that's when you can turn off your radio. For us at Eastern Predator, that's about managing the safety aspect of things, knowing that if there's a fire, if there's a flood, if there's anything that goes on in the area, we can talk to everyone, we know where everyone is, we know that they're on the radio and they can hear us. So, yeah, I'm muffed up, just say correction, and then say what you muffed up. If I'm talking to multiple call signs, I might want to talk to the whole network, and we'll give an example of this, but the word is exempt. So I'd go, I'm going to talk to everyone I'm called on the group Rover, and I'll say that I'm calling Rover exempt call sign 11. So everyone except 11 has to acknowledge and interact with me. So there might be an example where they're on a task, where they're on radio silence, or goodness knows what else, or they've already been given that information in person, so you would exempt them from the call. Fetch. We'll talk about radio appointment titles and some of the other words for people at the event. So you might need to talk to somebody on the white team, so you would call the nearest call sign to that white team person and say, fetch tractor, or fetch Ronan, or fetch whoever. And we'll go through all those call signs that are appropriate there in a moment. So you don't actually get on the radio and say, tractor, this is 1, over. You find the nearest call sign and you go fetch tractor. Figures. So before we say numbers on a military radio network, we always say figures before it, because there's a couple of different times that we use numbers on a radio network. For example, if we're giving a grid reference for navigation purposes, we always say grid before that. And that's just so that people know straight away exactly what we're talking about with those numbers, whether they're a code, whether they're your location, or whether they're just the time of day that something's going to happen. So if you're just using numbers in general, say figures 1, 2, over, for example. When you need to send some more detailed information, a report or a return, you offer a message, and that's the word you say. 0 Alpha, this is 1, message, over. Grid. So when we're talking about navigation, when we want to know where your location is, we need to send you somewhere, we will say move to grid, and then we'll give the 6-digit grid reference for what needs to happen. And the converse applies. If you need to say where you are, you say we are at grid, and then you give the number for that grid.
You just said earlier that figures precedes numbers. When supplying a grid ref, do you have grid, figures, and then the ref, or just grid and then ref?
No, I'll clear that up.
Sure.
Figures is for only giving figures.
Yep.
Grid is specifically saying I am giving a grid reference, so there's no confusion between figures and grid.
Right, got it.
So anytime you're giving a grid, you only say grid.
Yep.
Cool. I say again, if the person comes on the radio and says, I didn't get quite what you said, or there's really bad transmitting procedures, you go, I say again, rah, 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 whatever it was. I spell, again, if we've got really weak transmitting procedures, if you're a long way away and you can barely hear, there's a bit of static, you can spell out the word, and we'll give examples of all of this in a minute. If I'm giving a radio check, if I'm the superior call sign and I give a radio check and one of the call signs doesn't answer, I'll say that nothing heard. And that alerts everyone else on the radio network that I haven't heard it, because they may have heard it. For example, if call sign 22 is 12 kilometres that way, I'm not necessarily going to be able to hear what they say on the radio, but another unit that's 6 kilometres that way will hear both me and them. So by me saying nothing heard, it tells everyone else on the network that although they might hear it, I can't, and it gives units the ability to relay that information or say, call back and say, oh yeah, 0 Alpha, this is 1-1, we can hear that call sign, and this is the information they've got. That won't be a problem at Eastern Predator. It's only 3.5 Ks by 2 Ks, so we're all going to have radio range for that. Out to you. If you're finished talking to somebody in a big group call, you just say out to you, and that allows them to get off the call and go and do their actual job in the real world instead of sitting there and listening to a bunch of stuff they don't need to know. I'll explain directed net and non-directed net later, but they are pro words that we'll use. For Eastern Predator, we are a non-directed net. Some people would have heard the phonetic alphabet used in movies and stuff. We use a very specific one for this activity, and you can see the phonetic spelling of it on the right hand side and the normal word on the left. If I'm going to use letters to explain something on the radio, I'll always say, if I'm using the word A, I'll always say alpha in full, and so on and so forth. So if you're spelling something out, if you want to spell a word, you go whiskey, Oscar, Romeo, Delta. Here's some more. And I'm happy to print all this information out for you for later on so you've got it. So there's some there that are slightly different to what Americans use and what is used on the movies. The reason we do numbers this way is because we're using a digital radio system at Eastern Predator. We did some testing and we've made some slight changes to the doctrine that the military uses, and these ones come through very clear on the digital radio system that we're using. So some people would be used to using 5 You know, notice we use 5, and we've got 9 So because on that digital radio system it was very confusing as to whether you said 9 or a 5. And you can hear just me saying the words 9 and 5, they could be very easy to confuse on a radio net when you're in combat and you shouldn't gel balls at each other and a lot of stuff's going down. So we made that call to do that for this activity.
The phonetic alphabet. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Golf, Hotel, India, Juliet, Kilo, Lima, Mike, November, Oscar, Papa, Quebec, Romeo, Sierra, Tango, Uniform, Victor, Whiskey, X-Ray, Yankee, Zulu.
So you notice that in that demonstration I said them awful slowly and sort of emphasised everything. You don't need to do that on the radio net, that's just for explanatory purposes. As long as you talk slow enough so the person on the other end understands what you're saying, we're happy. And if you've got a group of advanced operators that are talking to each other, go at the speed that the operators can understand. So earlier I was talking about the use of the pro word I spell. So there's an example of how you would use it. If you need to get the message across a bit more clearly, you'd go walk, I spell, whiskey, alpha, lima, kilo, walk. Shouldn't have to use that sort of stuff. So for bigger numbers, there's a way to use that. So you can do 2008, or you can go 3359 hours, or you can break it down into the individual numbers. For times, you always put hours on the end. For everything else, as we explained earlier, that's how you use it. So yeah, our system should be able to cope with numbers in fairly good order. With that change we made to 5 to 5, so it should be a problem. And as you asked earlier, So if, for example, we're sending out a frequency for you to change to, that'd be a really weird thing on a military net, but on this sort of net we may need to send you decimal information, decimal. Yep, cool. And we're giving grid, and that's literally how you'd say it, grid 326847. We're using fixed call signs for the entirety of the activity, and if you have a look on the militia and the coalition secret areas on the forums, the vetted areas, they've already set up all the call signs for all the units in there, so they know who is who in the zoo before they get to the activity. If we were talking a cadet unit that is simulating an infantry unit, that's roughly the sort of call signs you'd imagine. We're not getting anywhere near this complex. The next thing I want to talk about is radio appointment titles. A lot of people, when they first get into using radios, don't understand the difference between a call sign and an appointment title. For example, my call sign at the event is 0 Alpha. I work in the command post, that's what I do. But I also have the appointment title of Sunray. So Sunray is the commander of an activity. So you can't get on a radio and go, Sunray, this is 1-1. You can call a call sign and ask for Sunray, but you can't call Sunray directly. Does that make sense? So there's a bunch of other ones in here that will suddenly start to make sense why you don't call them directly. All your calls as a subordinate unit should go to 0 Alpha, and you talk about, oh, I need Hawkeye to do this for me, or can we get Hawkeye to do that for me?
Can we also get a copy of that?
Yep. Most of the stuff that I'm teaching here is open source. And we've done that on purpose so that you can just get on Google and find this information by seeking out the old Army doctrine. So they're the important ones for this activity. There's no big changes from current Army doctrine, but there's some slight changes there. For example, there would be times where rickshaw might be molar depending on their function, or they might have. There's a couple of different call signs for the supply and ordnance, the logistics world, so we've just simplified that for the sake of Eastern Predator. So at EP we're going to have a tech that lives at the command post that can repair blasters for you. So if you need that done, that's when you call 0 Alpha and say, I need some help from Bluebell, this is what's going on. And we've got a whole process for doing that, but just so you know, when you want the tech to work on your blaster or do something like that, that's when you call for Bluebell.
2-1, this is 2-2, over.
2-2, this is 2-1, check over.
2-2, 2-1, hot over.
2-1, roger over.
2-2, roger.
So an initial call is the first part of a call. It's where you establish who you are, who you're talking to. They respond to you and give the same information back. You heard the 2-1, this is 2-2, that whole back and forwards. Once we get into an extended call, we cut away that 2-1, this is that whole thingo, and you just start talking in clear and just put it over at the end. Because once you've established communications through a digital network, you're not going to have somebody else jumping in with the same voice as you trying to pretend who you are. It's secure comms, so once you've established who you're talking to, who you are, you don't need to repeat that call sign thing. So as I was saying with Roger and Wilco earlier, slight differences there. I remember nearly 20 years ago when I was working with the 1st Battalion, they had a process where the word Roger was banned. That was a nuance for that battalion, so they had to say Wilco for everything or acknowledged. But in this case, this is what we're rolling with. So if you need to quickly check something, or you've got something going on in the background and you're talking to another station and you need to pause for a second, you just say wait. That gives you 5 seconds for that other call sign will go, okay, it's going to take a couple of seconds for them to respond to me, and you can use that up to twice. So it gives you the chance to go, oh yeah, I've got that in my pockets, do whatever, I've just got to check the grid on the map, wait, then you have to go wait out. You only get 2 options to use wait, and that means that there's going to be a long delay. You can also go straight to wait out. So if you know it's going to take you a couple of seconds to answer that question, but it might take you a minute to get the information, you go straight to wait out. So there's no need to go wait out. You can go straight to, wait out. So we alluded on what out to you means earlier. So I'm finished with you. You don't need to respond anymore. It's all over and done. So the next part of today's package is the types of call. So we have single, multiple, net, collective and exempt. Most of the time you're only going to be doing single calls. It'll be one call sign, calling another call sign, doing some quick passage of information, and then it's all over and done. But I will cover this as quickly as I can. So for example, 0 Alpha calls 2-1, they have a conversation, that is a single call because there's one station at each end of it.
2-1, this is 0 Alpha, move now, over. 0 Alpha, this is 2-1, cannot comply for 10 mic, over. 2-1, this is 0 Alpha, roger, out.
Okay, so an important thing about a single call or any type of call on the net, you notice that 0 Alpha was the initiator of this call. Who finished the call by saying out? It's 0 Alpha. So 2-1 can't go, no, I've had enough of you and say out. It's only the station that initiates the call that can say this call is over, because they may have further information to pass to you that's a second line or a third line or a totally different subject. So we might have 30 call signs on the station, on the net, and you only want to talk to 5 of them. So this would be an example.
Bravo, 2-1 Charlie, this is 2-1, move now, over.
2-1, this is 2-1 Alpha, roger, over.
2-1, this is 2-1 Bravo, roger, over. 2-1, this is 2-1 Charlie, roger, over. 2-1 Alpha, 2-1 Bravo, 2-1 Charlie, this is 2-1, out.
So the major difference there is 0 Alpha said all 3 call signs in both the start and the end of the call. 0 Alpha said the out at the end, and everyone else said over. Cool bananas. So if you are on the coalition side of the force, our net call sign is a rover, because we are Task Force Rover. So there might be a chance for 0 Alpha, if they want to talk to everyone that's on the coalition, they'll say, they'll make a call and they'll call call sign rover. That means everyone on the net has to answer.
Rover, this is 0 Alpha, Holdfast has departed this location, over.
0 Alpha, this is 1-1, roger, over.
0 Alpha, this is 1-2, roger, over.
My bad on the
0
words
Alpha,
on the
this is
screen
1-3,
too.
roger, over. 0 Alpha, this is 1-4, roger, over. Rover, this is 0 Alpha, roger, out.
What it should say on the screen is each one of those subunits should have over at the end. I don't know why I spelt that wrong, but that is my fault. And we talked about exempt. I'm going to go straight through this, right? For example, this net is nicknamed X-ray Papa. So I would say X-ray Papa exempt 1-2.
X-ray Papa, this is 0 Alpha, exempt 1-2, move now, over.
0 Alpha, this is 1-1, roger, over.
0 Alpha, 1-3, roger, over. 0 Alpha, 1-4, roger, over. This is 0 Alpha, roger, out.
You'll notice that each time we've done any of these calls, that it's always in numerical order that everyone answers. So you saw there that 1-1 was first because they're the lowest number, and 1-2 being the exempt didn't answer at all, and 1-3 jumped in straight away. That's exactly how it'll work on our radio net as well. When we give out the ORBAT for each of the order of battle, the description of what units are who, they'll know where they fit in that pattern for Eastern Predator.
In this particular scenario here, if 1-3 fails to reply, does 1-4 wait indefinitely?
Now 1-4 waits for a little while, gives them a chance to go in, and then goes, okay, now it's my turn.
Right.
1-4 answers. Then we have a little pause at the end for 1-3 because they might have been halfway through a contact or he might have dropped his hands. God knows what happened. Then we give a little pause at the end for 1-3 to jump in, and then 0 Alpha would acknowledge that 1-3 hasn't answered. They go 1-3, nothing heard, everyone out to you, and then they would probably initiate a separate call looking for 1-3.
So in this scenario, 1-1 replies, 1-2 fails to reply, 1-3 waits 10 seconds, whatever, some arbitrary amount of time.
Yep.
1-4 replies, 0 Alpha acknowledges responses from 1-1, 1-3 and 1-4,
Correct?
and then waits a minute and then gives 1-2 a direct call.
Waits 5 to 10 seconds, and if they haven't jumped in by then, you close this call down, you finish that off, and then 0 Alpha would go, 1-3 is 0 Alpha, radio check over.
Yep.
Just to make sure that they're still existing. So we're only going to establish the net once at Eastern Predator, so literally as you walk into the AO, just before you cross the border into Astana, you'll turn on your radio at a predetermined time and 0 Alpha will call you and say radio check, and it's pretty...
Rover, this is 0 Alpha, radio check over.
0 Alpha, this is 1, roger over.
0 Alpha, this is 2, roger over. 0 Alpha, this is 3, weak, but you are readable, over. 0 Alpha, this is 8, you are weak, but readable, over. 0 Alpha, roger, out.
So you'll notice there was a bunch of different replies to radio check there, and we'll go into those in a minute. But generally speaking, instead of going with an extended reply saying, oh yeah, you're loud and clear, blah, 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 just say roger, get it out of the way, yeah, we've got you, it's all good. There's the breakdown. So it's talking about your signal strength, that first word, and then the second word is can I read you or can I not? I would imagine at Eastern Predator, you're never going to have anything but loud and clear.
Rover, this is 0 Alpha, radio check over.
0 Alpha, this is 1, roger over.
0 Alpha, this is 2, roger over. 0 Alpha, this is 3, weak, but you are readable, over. 0 Alpha, this is 8, you are weak, but readable, over. 0 Alpha, roger, out.
So you saw the first bit was about the transmission strength, and the second bit is can I understand what you're saying anyway? So again, as Steele alluded to before, if somebody is missing, I'll say, roger, nothing heard from that call sign, and we move along, and then we try and find them later.
0 Alpha, this is 1, 2, permission to join the net, over.
1, 2, 0 Alpha, roger, over.
0 Alpha, 1, 2, out.
So this would be an example where we get a tier 3 player, or a whole tier 3 squad that comes on Saturday morning. They hadn't joined the net already, so when they rock up to the command post, they get all their stuff, then we go, okay, you need to join the net. That's the process they would use to join the net. Because there's no radio check that would go out that would then add in a new call sign. And this sort of tells everyone that's already on the net, hey, 1-2's just joined us. Gives them that situational awareness. I hope that everyone in this day and age has a watch. This is a relic from the past where everyone couldn't afford a watch. If we need to talk about GPS time or coordinating down to the nth second, there would be a time check given on the radio net. But at Eastern Predator, we are not going to need this for the first one. Maybe in a future one we'll do a time check so that everyone knows exactly when to execute a plan. Everyone's got their watch exactly the same minute. But nowadays that's pretty well done.
Rover.
I'm not even going to play that. Because we're using portable radios that have a limited lifespan, there will be times that you need to close down your call sign. So you just jump on it and say, I need to close down for a battery change, I need to close down because my handset's not working. If you've cut the cord on your handset, you've done anything like that, You get somebody on the net say, I need to jump off for a second, I need to change my batteries, I need to do whatever else. And it's a fairly simple procedure.
Zero Alpha, this is 1-4 over.
1-4, 0 Alpha, send over.
Zero Alpha, 1-4, request permission to close down for battery change over.
0 Alpha, Roger, close down now. Out.
Zero Alpha, this is 1-4, permission to rejoin the net over.
1-4, this is 0 Alpha, Roger over.
Zero Alpha, this is 1-4, Roger out.
Okay, so you notice on that first call where 1-4 called up 0 Alpha, said they wanted the battery change, and then 0 Alpha actually set out instead of the station that initiated the call. This is one of those anomalies because 0 Alpha's in charge, they're giving you permission to close down. So close down now out is actually an order. They're saying yes, do that right now. So that's one of those anomalies where you don't have to jump in at the end and say Roger out.
Yep. Is that one of those situations where you would say you've got a message, you go 0 Alpha message over and wait for a response, or would you just go straight into the long message?
No, if you've got a specific message, there's a whole procedure for that, and we'll go into that.
But that's not one of those?
No, no. A short burst of information that's one transmission isn't a message, it's just information.
Yep.
So, for example, you want to talk to the real medic at the activity, so you call up 0 Alpha and go, can you fetch Starlight for me? 0 Alpha will go, yeah, we can get the medic, we can talk and get them to talk to you on the net, or no, they're a bit far away, we'll have to do something. So the pro words you're looking for are, can you fetch? When they reply, they'll still say the call sign 0 Alpha, but they'll say 0 Alpha, this is Starlight speaking, so that you're clear that they're talking on the radio from 0 Alpha and they are that person or activity.
Zero Alpha, this is 1-1, finish playtime, over.
1-1, this is 0 Alpha, playtime speaking, over.
Zero Alpha, this is 1-1, send vehicle now, over.
1-1, 0 Alpha, playtime speaking, Roger over.
Zero Alpha, 1-1, Roger out.
So in this theoretical scenario, playtime is your transport assets. So if you look at the context there, fetch playtime, yeah, send me a vehicle, that all makes sense why they're using those words. Some people shorten it down and just go 0 Alpha, can we get a vehicle? That's up to you. So in this example, playtime isn't close by, so they've just gone, you're going to have to wait. And then when they jump in, they'll make a call and say, I am playtime. And there's a couple of other examples there, moonbeam, playtime, so on and so forth. Cool, now we come to the really cool messages. Let's have a 2-minute break, jump up, have a stretch, have a smoke, have a whatever. Just get out of the room and get off your feet for a second. Sweet. Okay, so thanks for coming back from the break. Hope you had a smoke or whatever it is that makes you feel better about yourself. I had a coffee, so it was all good. So we've established the basics of talking on a radio net. The nuts and bolts of Eastern Predator for you will be the sharing of messages. So there's certain information that 0 Alpha needs to get when certain things happen in the area of operations, and there's certain things that 0 Alpha will need to send to you to enable you to do things, such as find enemy units or move to a location and do a task. So that's what offering messages is all about. So it's very simple. You just go 2-1, this is 0 Alpha, message over, and then you would give them all the information that you need. But the idea of saying the word message, or the pro word message, is to say there's going to be lots of information coming to you. You might want to get a notepad and pen out. So you need to be ready to receive that. So we have just message, and then we have a whole bunch of different standard messages that we use all the time. Those that have done any military type stuff before will be familiar with some of these, and I'll explain each one in turn. So a long message is defined as anything that's going to take more than 30 seconds to get across. So if you've just got I've just got to relay this short bit of information, that's not a long message, it's just a normal radio call. But if it's going to take people to write stuff down and it's going to be toing and froing, then it becomes a long message and we use this complicated process. So we'll explain what a packet is. No, that's further down. So a packet is a group of information. So when we send a message, we send a packet of 3 lines on the message. So I'll explain that a bit better when we show you the first couple of them and you'll go, oh yeah, that makes sense. But a package is 3 lots of information and then a pause. So at the end of the packet, we say more to follow over, and then when the station receiving is ready, has finished writing all that down and is ready to receive that, they go send over. Notice nowhere in that send over is there call signs, because once you've established that there's a message going, you don't need to draw out and go 1, 1, this is 1, 2, blah, blah, blah. You just need to get that information across, be as brief and accurate and clear as you can. So this is where you can use that all before or all after. If they've sent a packet of information, you've written half of it down, you go, hang on a second, I didn't get that line A. So go, say again, line alpha. When everyone's happy, it's just like any other call. So these are the fixed messages that we're going to use. So a lock stat is a location statement, and we'll go through each of these in detail. A DEM is a demand for essential supplies. A SITREP tells you what your situation is. Incident, specific incident stuff. Yeah, we've just encountered this political thing that's going on. There's a rally happening. There's a wall of water coming down, so on and so on. Wagon wheel's a little bit more complex. If you need a vehicle to move from point A to point B, you send what's called a wagon wheel request. So that tells Zero Alpha that they need to plan a route for that vehicle to go through the AO. Because there might be IEDs, there might be mines, there might be an area controlled by the militia. So you say, I need this thing that goes in a car to go from point A to point B. That's what a wagon wheel's for. Notocas, Casevac, will explain how they work in the scenario because they're slightly different to how they work in the real military. And those that are in the military will understand why we're using the Notocas in part of this. And contact is literally somebody just shot at me. When you're doing the basic drill or any of that infantry type stuff, when somebody shoots at you, you yell out contacts over and around your nose you're being shot at. And there's a whole procedure there, and we do the same on the radio. And we'll go through that next. So we talked about packets before, short groups of information transmitted in short bursts with more to follow at the end, and the other call sign says send over when they're ready for that next packet, or they say again all after, say again all before, so on and so forth.
Zero Alpha, this is 1-1, wagon wheel over.
1-1, Zero Alpha, wagon wheel, send over.
Zero Alpha, this is 1-1, Alpha stop, 1-1. Bravo stop, truck. Charlie stop, grid, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, more to follow.
See that 3 lines, more to follow.
Delta stopped, 6, 3, 2, 1, 6, 1. Echo stop, hurry 1. Foxtrot stop, RV 0930, more to follow.
3 lines again.
Golf stop, this call sign cannot move this item by hand. Over.
1-1, Zero Alpha, wagon wheel received over.
Zero Alpha, 1-1, rolled out.
So in this example, the call sign called Zero Alpha and said, we've found a truck and we need to move that truck. And that may or may not be something that happens at Eastern Predator. You might find a bomb, you might find a boat, you might find something and you go, okay, we need to move this thing. Obviously we can't pick it up by hands. So you get on the radio, you put a wagon wheel in it and say, I want this thing moved. The thing to be moved might also be your section. You might go, well, I need to move 12 people from here to there. The wagon wheel is the way you do that. If you need something moved in a vehicle, you get on, wagon wheel, this is what we need moved. It doesn't matter what the thing is, and Zero Alpha will decide over the course of time how they're going to achieve that, if they can achieve that, if there's a vehicle available, They might call you back and go, yes, we can do that, it might be an hour, so you need to keep secure at that location. There's a whole bunch of things that could happen. So a wagon wheel is a request, because you request things of Zero Alpha. You can't order Zero Alpha to put you on a truck and move you somewhere. Because obviously there's a bunch of other people in the area of operations. We've only got so many people behind the scenes driving around in vehicles, and we don't want too many of them out in the AO because we want that infantry feel about things.
Zero Alpha, this is 1. Contact, way out.
So we'll go into the next part of the contact report now. I'll get there in a second.
Zero Alpha, this is 1. Contact, report over.
1, this is Zero Alpha, send message over.
Zero Alpha, this is 1. Alpha stop, 1. Bravo stop, grid, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Charlie stop, 4. More follow.
So that's 3 lines, more to follow.
Delta stop, engaged enemy. Echo stop, enemy withdrew. Foxtrot stop, yes. End of message over.
Zero Alpha, message received over.
Zero Alpha, 1, roger.
So you'll notice in that example he didn't use golf because there was nothing special to tell Zero Alpha about, but all that information was relayed about, yes, we can still fight the war, this is how many enemy there were, this is what we did to them, we killed them all, they withdrew, we withdrew, so on and so forth. You would have also noticed the first part of the call was the call sign called Zero Alpha and just said contact, wait out. That just tells everyone on the net that that call sign is in contact with the enemy. It's that simple. It's just contact, wait out. And the reason we use wait out is because then other units can transmit. They try and avoid it at all costs because obviously they might need to call in artillery. They might need to call in the quick reaction force. They might need to do a bunch of stuff. So if you hear a contact report on the net, you do everything you can to minimise non-essential traffic. Unless you're in contact yourself or you have a Casevac, there should be no reason for you to get on the net and do anything. Cool. Let's move on.
Zero Alpha, this is 2, Casevac, over. 2, this is Zero Alpha, wait. Wait.
Notice the use of wait.
Send over.
He wasn't quite ready to write it down.
Zero Alpha, this is 2, Alpha stop, 2, Bravo, red, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Charlie stop, vehicle access, more follow over. 2, this is Zero Alpha, send over. Delta stop, priority 1, Echo stop, soaking chestway, Foxtrot, line line, and a message over. 2, this is Zero Alpha, Casevac received over. Zero Alpha 2, roger out.
So one thing I want to make really clear at Eastern Predator, if you have a real injury of any description, screw that. Just get on the radio, say Zero Alpha, this is 2-1, we have a no duff. No duff means it's not fake. And just talk straight up, straight down. It doesn't matter who gets on the radio, just say who you are and we'll fix it from there. On the radios that you have at Eastern Predator, and I'll do a cutaway for Jet, but this button on the side here is the SOS button. When you press that button, the GPS in this is enabled and we can see exactly where you are. So you need to train everyone in your section. That's the SOS button. When you press that, suddenly that's a GPS tracker. So in that no duff situation, we can just get a car and get to you. We'll have an ambulance on site. So it just prevents people worrying about doing all that stuff, all the poodle faking. We don't care if it's a real emergency. Someone gets a snake bite, breaks a leg, gets a stick in their eye, anything like that, press that button. Yeah, it's not going to go, it's not an EPIRB, it's not anything else. It will just go to Zero Alpha and we'll sort it out. Does that make sense? Let's move on. So a lock stat, yeah, we just need to know where you are, or you might send it to Zero Alpha because you've been on patrol for a while, you had to change what you're doing, so you send Zero Alpha lock stat and say, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. We've just had a lunch break, so we're on the move again type stuff. So we've combined SITREP and incident reports and INT reps. so that it's just one pro forma that you send in. So you might come across the mayor and the mayor is acting really weird. Yeah, that's when you get on the radio, call your command element and go, we just did this, the mayor did this, and what your intentions are after that. And that's just so that your faction commander knows what's going on in the field, gets in that situational awareness, so that he might go, okay, well, I'm going to order everyone to interact with the mayor in a certain way after that. If you get any intelligence, such as you find some plans or you find the codes for something, that's where you put it through. Interrupt, this is what we found, this is what we're going to do, so on and so forth. The priority system for Eastern Predator, when you're requesting transport, when you're requesting anything, is in a ratio of 1, 4 and 8. So at the top we've got a PRIDEM. If you don't have the item you need within an hour, your mission will fail. An OPDEM at Eastern Predator, if you don't have the item within 4 hours, your mission will fail. And MATEM, you've got 8 hours. Same as for a Kazovac. If you've got an in-game Kazovac and it's just a guy with a broken leg, they don't need a chopper to come and get them, do they? So you put that at the priority of 1 hour, 4 hours or 8 hours as required for that Kazovac. In-game, if you have everyone's been shot and dead and they're out of game, obviously you probably put in a Pri 1 because you're not combat effective anymore, so that's really important to get a Kazovac out to you. In terms of ammunition for the coalition, when you've had your contact, you do your reorg. At the end of the contact, you go, okay, we've used X amount of ammo. That's when you put in your PRIDEM. You go, I need ammunition within an hour, or we're going to get slaughtered. Or shit, we're getting low on ammunition. We're down to half what we had. That's when you put in an OPDEM. And literally, when you get on to 0 Alpha, that's the name that you use. You go PRIDEM over, OPDEM over, MATEM over. Because it tells everyone immediately by the name what the urgency is. Make sense? Chatter marks, we're not probably going to use them at Eastern Predator, but that's a word you'll get familiar with later on. So, Notacaz. This is different to how the military uses a Notacaz. So those of you with a military background will see this is different. So, for example, everyone in your squad is killed. That's when you send a Notacaz in. Because it says, okay, we're no longer combat effective, everyone's been killed, and it gives your faction commander some really important information like we need to get a quick reaction force with a medic to you to bring you back into the game. If, for whatever reason, something else happens, like you get gassed in game and everyone's affected by mustard gas, that's when you send in a Notacaz because you're no longer combat effective and you need a medical sort of aid. Yes, there is radiation. Yes, there is chemical warfare. All that stuff can happen at Eastern Predator. Does that all make sense? Cool. So the last thing I want to talk about again is NODA. If you have any sort of real emergency, if a fire breaks out, if there's an earthquake, if somebody is bleeding, if somebody has an injury that is a real injury, other than like routine stuff like blisters and that sort of stuff, but if they're in danger of life or limb or losing something permanently, forget everything we just taught you, press that emergency button and go no duff. Because no duff tells everyone on the net to stop what they're doing, pull out that dead rag, pull out their safety flag, the exercise stops and we concentrate on the real injury. Everyone else can wait that half hour. Right? A real injury is much more important than a few people playing a game for half an hour. We've done a deal with Queensland Ambulance. They're going to be on site. We've made, they've invoiced us, so we will have a real paramedic and a real ambulance on site throughout the day, the whole time, and they'll be on standby at night where they go away and sleep somewhere else. And we call that paramedic direct and they come back if there's anything that's not life-threatening. Otherwise, Triple O's been involved in the process of us doing the safety management for the activity, so we will be able to go and get a real important medic at short notice. For first aid type stuff, we expect you're all adults, you're all above 18. If you've got blisters or worms or dysentery or it's coming out both ends, that's something you need to manage until you become a burden on your section. And that's when you call in a no-duff. Cool bananas?
I suppose in the event of players having altercations, it explodes to a point beyond control, same thing.
Call in a no-duff. Yep.
Yep.
Just jump on there. Because there may well be a time where people are very tired and very upset about certain things that have happened, think people haven't called a hit or whatever else. There may be a time where people get aggressive with each other. Yes, call a no-duff in.
You've just used an example of someone not calling a hit. Surely we're not calling a no-duff because we want to talk to an admin.
The example is we've escalated. We've escalated beyond somebody. Like you've been interacting with somebody for 2 days, and you go, "This guy never calls their hits. This girl never calls their hits." You're getting frustrated with him. You've had 2 hours sleep.
Yep.
All of a sudden, it turns into an altercation. That's when you press that SOS button, and you get some of us out there, and we try and de-escalate everything, because the last thing we want players to be trying to do is manage political situations. Let us do that stuff for you. Let us get you back into the game, doing something else, and we'll deal with the personal conflicts. Because it'll happen. We expect it. It happens at normal speedball games. People get upset, and that's only a 4 or 5 hour period, and you have breaks and you walk away and stuff. So if you're operating for 36 to 48 hours in the field without a break, people are going to get short.
Yeah.
So no duff to call us.
Also try and do admin. Talk to your squad leader can escalate it to your faction leader if it needs to continue on, and we can work it out from there, and if it needs to get involved.
Use your chain of command, like talk to your squad leader can talk to the commander if they need to. If those avenues aren't working, then maybe look at calling a no-duff and saying that this is escalated, we've tried to seek resolution here, but it's escalated too much now. We don't want people going, 2 people are kind of looking like they're going to blow each other to no-duff. Just try and work it out amongst each other, then escalate it if you need to.
Yep. Just for clarity for the camera, if it's an actual altercation, that's when you go to no-duff. All the stuff leading up to it, speak to the people in your squad, pass it up the chain, go through a normal process where you go, I'm having a problem with this person, and speak to other people about it. Talk to each other. You're going to be in a small team. It might be somebody within your team, and they don't know that the thing that they're doing is rubbing you up the wrong way. The only way to get that across to them is say, hey Bill, I hate it when you slurp your coffee. It's really rubbing. I don't care what the thing is. I'm just using that as a throwaway. But if there's something, if they snore, tell them, dude, can we sleep 50 metres apart because you snore? Rather than 3 days into the activity, you want to punch the dude. Yeah. So let's try and make this as much fun as we can. What we're going to do now is we're going to cut the live feed on YouTube. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We're going to go out now and grab some of the radios that we're using at Eastern Predator and some UHF radios and practice some of this stuff. Give you a bit of a chance. We're going to give you a mentor each. So one of the white team or yellow team will be with you, and we'll just walk out a couple hundred metres in each direction, and you'll call into Zero Alpha and do some of this stuff. Cool bananas? Thanks YouTube. See you later. Bye YouTube.